Those two recently released Cubans said to be missing. Meanwhile, one attorney questions their release. The DNA leader questions why the men were locked up for so long. Just 2 weeks of being in a new agreement with BEC, Power Secure is sold. Plus, Rotarians of West Nassau are donating to a local youth program. We've got those stories and a lot more coming up tonight. I'm Kyle Joaquin, and NB12 starts now. Talking news tonight, since Foreign Affairs and Immigration Minister Fred Mitchell said in the House of Assembly that the two Cubans who were recently released could possibly be rearrested since they pose a national security risk and have no status to remain in the country, their attorney Fred Smith today said he has no clue where the men could be or if they're even still in New Providence. And attorney Wayne Munroe QC weighed in on the matter as well, questioning their release, saying he doesn't understand why immigration wasn't more involved. Simone Davis reports.
While in Parliament on Wednesday, Mitchell sought to explain his views on the Cuban matter and maintained his stance that the men are too dangerous to be free in the Bahamas. Today, Director of the Department of Immigration William Pratt confirmed with NB12 that the department is searching for the men so that they could be apprehended until they are sent to another country. Pratt said the last he heard of the men was that they were seen in Bimini 2 days ago. However, during an interview with the guest host on Guardian Radio's talk show Let's Talk Live, attorney Fred Smith was asked if he knew the whereabouts of Carlos Pupo and Lazaro Marin, to which Smith indicated that he did not know where the men were and he just did his job as their attorney. Attorney Wayne Munroe said he thinks it's just disturbing that the men can't be found.
That is a sign of procedurally something that may appear that would be disturbing. So, for instance, the only time that you have had, to my memory, persons deliberately released and couldn't be found was when, I think, in the last administration, they just decided to let a lot of people out of the detention center. If these men had no status, then they have no right to be here.
While noting that he has to see the justice's judgment before further commenting on the ruling, Munroe questioned the Supreme Court's decision to release the men without forwarding the matter to the Department of Immigration.
I do not know what process was engaged with the release of these men. The impression I got, and I haven't read the judgment, and so take it with that caveat, that these men were in prison as a place of detention for the Immigration Department. The usual place of detention for the Immigration Department is the Immigration Detention Center. When I did a bail application for 2 Americans who were charged with homicide in Bimini, when their bail was upheld in the Court of Appeal, they were not released to walk out of the police station or prison with me. They were released to immigration, who saw them to the airport and saw them out of the country.
Although he threaded very lightly on the topic, stating that he wanted to respect Justice Stephen Isaac's decision and he did not have all the information, Munroe suggested that he did not understand why an immigration officer was not in court the day the men were released. When asked if he thinks the justice was wrong in his decision to release the men, this was his response.
I can't comment on the judge's reasons for doing what he has done. Although there are certain things that jump out at me, people have to come to grips with the fact that judges make decisions. No judge is perfect, because if a judge was perfect, you wouldn't need the Court of Appeal. And so a judge has the right to be wrong. I don't know if this judge was wrong in this instance or not. Time will tell if an appeal is filed.
On the other hand, opposition members said they were not pleased with Mitchell's explanation. The party's deputy leader, Peter Turnquest, told the Nassau Guardian yesterday that he believes Attorney General Alison Maynard Gibson ought to publicly explain why the prosecutor in the Cuban case did not object to the release of the men. Munroe said he doesn't understand how that issue comes before a party that has no solutions to any of the issues they often complain about. The attorney said the main questions should be, where are the men and why are they still free?
And this is yet another demonstration of just being personal and not seeking to improve the system for the betterment of Bahamians, the betterment of the country. And that is actually sad.
Reporting for NB12, I'm Simone Davis.
Well, leader of the Democratic National Alliance and former State Minister of Immigration, Granville McCartney, also weighing in on the saga surrounding those released Cubans. McCartney said, although he agrees the Bahamas shouldn't be burdened by the Cuban men's presence in the country, it was wrong to keep the men locked up for so long without charge. Dana Smith reports.
It's unfortunately a soap opera with some terrible actors in it.
McCartney said the controversy surrounding those released Cuban men is just another mess up by this Christie administration. He questioned why the men were held for so long without charge and why exactly they're considered a national security risk in the first place. He said this matter is just another thing to add to the PLP's list of blunders.
They more than blunder, but that's their MO, a blundering government. A blundering government that has not fulfilled any of their main promises to the country.
Carlos Pupo and Lazaro Marin were released from prison by a Supreme Court justice last Thursday after spending nearly 3 years there without charge. McCartney said it was inhumane to keep the men in prison for so long, and he questioned if the men are in fact a national security risk, why haven't they been charged before the courts with a crime? He suggested the immigration minister labeling them as such could add to government's difficulties in getting another country to accept them.
And today we don't know what risks he's talking about. And if they were a national security risk and being detained based on that, then they should have been put before the courts so that the courts can determine if they breached any laws in our country relative to national security. That did not happen. Cuba is not accepting their own nationals. So we either accept them or we find a third country to accept them. It may be very difficult for a third country to accept them, especially in light of the fact that the Minister of Immigration said that they are a national security risk.
The former state minister of immigration also took note of the Immigration Department's wanted alert for the released men. McCartney said given the Supreme Court's decision to release them, the department should have granted temporary status to the men as government continues to appeal for another country to take them.
I note in one of the dailies this morning that they're saying that there's a wanted alert for the Cuban men. A wanted alert for the Cuban men. And they're referring to the men that were released by the court a few days back. Well, the thing that the government should have done, based on the court's decision, and in light of the fact that they have not appealed the court's decision, they should have given temporary status to these nationals, Cuban nationals, pursuant to what the court said, because they ought not to be in this country without any type of status.
Reporting for NB12, I'm Dana Smith.
In other news, PowerSecure International has been sold. The announcement came yesterday and only 2 weeks after PowerSecure signed a management services agreement with the Bahamas government to transform the electricity sector. The company has been sold to Atlanta-based Southern Company for $431 million. Under the terms of the deal, PowerSecure, based in Wake Forest, North Carolina, will become a wholly owned subsidiary of Southern Company. It is still unclear how, if at all, the acquisition will affect the work PowerSecure has contracted to do here in the Bahamas. The company has been hired for a minimum of $10 million and possibly as much as $25 million to manage electricity generation, transmission, and distribution for Bahamas Power and Light, the new power company wholly owned by the debt-strangled Bahamas Electricity Corporation. Well, Union of Tertiary Educators Bahamas President Mark Hume says the College of the Bahamas is not yet ready for university status. The bill to take the College of the Bahamas to university status is still not expected to be completed until April, but Hume says there is much more work to be done. Giorgio Bain has the story.
The president of the Union of Tertiary Educators of the Bahamas says he does not think the college is ready for university status just yet, as there are more important things to put in place than new infrastructure.
Are we ready for this transition? No, it's not funded. We don't have the funds for it. You know, it's one thing to say you're transitioning and we're going to give you the necessary funding that you need to transition. And it's another thing to transition and then You don't have the necessary funding and tools. There are some in our space, in this space, who can't really be honest and say that.
Hume says even to this point, he is not privy to the dollar amount being put on the transition to university status. He is only aware of the $32 million loan to build capacity.
Because nobody's really sat down to cost this out. That's a concern for me. I'm an individual who really needs a plan. You need to have a plan. You need to have it cost out if there are costs involved. And on council, that's one of the things I fight for all the time, for us to have better oversight and management of our finances. This is a public institution.
Hume says the morale of the faculty and staff is the lowest he has ever seen in the 10 years that he has been to the college, and he strongly urges college officials to get their priorities in the right order before it's too late.
When you look at the morality, in general, it's very low. A lot of people are despondent. When you look around and see the investments that are taking place in the capital development project, but then there's a lack of investment in the human capital in the institution, that's made a lot of people very despondent. I've been here for 10 years now, and in the 10 years I've been here, faculty, staff, students have all been looking for some administration, college administration, to show that it really cares about the individuals and are prepared to invest in the individuals. And now you see 10 years later, there's still a lack of that.
Hume says the only reason the college is being hasted towards university status is for political advancement. He called it overwhelming.
Politics. It's all about politics. It's all about creating legacies. It's all about, what is it that, how am I going to be perceived down the road when I'm no longer in politics? It's all politics, and I don't think anybody would be able to deny that. When you look at everything that's basically taking place in this country right now, BAMSI, the National Health Insurance, COB, all of these, University of Bahamas, it's all about policy and legacies.
Hume says he would recommend that the process is slowed down to bring the college to college standard before trying to make it a university. Reporting for NB12, I'm Georgie O'Bain.